all the time. Obviously, sitting in the cell, trapped in that, can't really do nothing. And then when something kicks off, I love it because it's excitement, innit? Just makes your day more go quicker, and it makes it more lively, innit? When something goes down. When you're in the moment and you're fighting, bruv, you're fighting to survive so you don't get worked out. So they're gonna come and smack you up, so you gotta smack them down before they put you down, innit? I gotta put in the work on you. If you die, innit? That's how it goes, innit?
Okay, all right there. Welcome back to my channel. Absolutely, totally excited and kind of privileged, to be honest with you, because I have got Pepsi, who, when he was failing to get StreamYard loaded, I was muttering to myself while we were communicating via direct messages on Twitter, calling him, what was I calling him? Not Pepsi. Pebbles. He couldn't sort it out, and I was going, "Oh, come on, Pebbles, don't let me down." And after about the third time, I thought, "Hang on, why am I calling this geezer Pebbles? His name's Pepsi." Anyway, Pepsi has got an incredible story to tell of so many different aspects of his life, but I'm going to get him to focus on one aspect of his life in this video. Pepsi's been in and out of institution since he was about 14 years old. It's been a fucking hard stretch for the man. When you hear the sort of things he's been through, well, I'm not going to try and be psychic about what you think, but when I heard him talk before, I was amazed that the man has come out alive. You know, I'm amazed that he's come out with any sense of compassion for humanity. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. Now, I believe, I mean, don't get me wrong, Pepsi has been a naughty boy for sure. And I believe a healthy society punishes people who break the laws. I do. But I also think they offer them some kind of rehabilitation, and they certainly do not dehumanize them. And when you hear what this man has been through, you have to ask yourself, is that the kind of society you want to be part of? Because if you're not going to rehabilitate prisoners, if you're just going to treat them worse than animals, they are going to come out, they're going to carry on using drugs, they're going to carry on committing crime, they're going to be in and out of the court system, in and out of the rehab system, in and out of the prison system, costing people like you and me an absolute fortune. It's insanity. So, without further ado, let me welcome you, introduce you to Pepsi Watson. How are you, brother?
Yeah, I'm really well, thanks. Yeah, just crazy busy. Just like I was saying to you in the messages, I'm just getting ready to move out of this charity house into my own place. So yeah, it's a big move forward for me at the minute down here in London. So I'm just I'll be doing that this week, and I've had exam results come in, so I passed my exams, which I was just blown away with because it's been really tough. I spent the whole year doing the module in probation hostels and moving to London. So I study with the Open University, and I'm doing a 6-year degree. So I'll start my 5th year this week, and then my last final year is next year. So yeah, just focusing on those two things at the minute. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, I can't, and I am kind of being hyperbolic, but I can't believe the brain cells actually work. I mean, what I know of Aylesbury, I've had friends go there. I had a friend go there. I was telling you, it's 6.5 foot tall, 6.5 foot wide, a ruthless man, a dangerous man. He came out of Aylesbury a stuttering wreck, and he's dead now. He drunk himself to death. He could not cope. It broke him, and it broke him irreversibly. And here's you doing this. You got clean. I mean, you've had similar, you know, the smack and the crack, usual fucking capers, and you've got yourself clean. You've managed to survive a 12-step house. You're being generous with charity house. I mean, I've been to many of those myself, and it's just shocking. I mean, God. And what I know of rehabilitation, not just drug rehabilitation, but any rehabilitation, prison rehabilitation, is the ruthless longevity of it. Right, now you're out of prison, you've got to go here. You've got to stay clean. Now you've got to go to this house. Now you've got to keep your probation up. And it's almost like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So at the moment, I'm seeing you at the end of, what, 20 years from your first incarceration?
Yeah.
Wow. So, can you tell us about Aylesbury? You were nicked in Norwich, and they've hit you with the bad news that you're going to the notorious Aylesbury Young Offenders Institute, and you're what, 18?
Yeah, I was 18. I was on remand in Norwich Prison in the Young Offenders Wing on G Wing in Norwich. And like you just said, notorious. Aylesbury had this fearsome reputation around the Young Offenders Prison estate. And it would only normally be for life sentence prisoners or like people with double figure sentences like 12 or 14 years, but they would send also disruptive prisoners there. And at the time when they gave me the news, when I was in the education block on G Wing in Norwich that I was going there, I was just shocked really, because at that time I hadn't been disruptive. I wasn't a control problem in the prison. You know, these 1%ers that they talk about, who's constantly, you know, being violent, flooding out, smashing up, fighting with the officers and such like. We had a couple of riots and stuff, but I was no more disruptive than anybody else. I'd
Pepsi, do you
committed
know why they sent you then? Well, you know, I mean, for people who don't know about prisons and that, the problem with lifers, the problem with people doing 20, 30 years, they don't give a shit. They got nothing to lose. And if you're being banged up with them, it kind of unbalances the situation. The stakes aren't the same. You know, you're looking at a few years, and if they've got 20, you've got more to lose than them at every situation, at every turn. And it really unbalances the rules.
I think it was like the length of my sentence, because I had 4 years, which at that time in 2000 was a parole sentence. So you could go for parole after 2 years. If not, you would be released at the 2/3 mark. And sort of geographically in East Anglia and Norwich, when you were a young offender and you got sentenced to a parole sentence, I mean, there's not really that many prisons. There's a few long-term prisons like Swinfen Hall, Moorlands, but Aylesbury is the end of the road. I mean, that is like the toughest, meanest, most notorious young offenders institution. And I don't know if I'd upset someone, an officer, the transfers, I don't know, but they told me I was going there. When they took me out of the education block, they said, you ship out. I said, all right. They said Aylesbury, and then I was just like, wow. I said, all right, yeah, no worries. And then he put me in my cell to pack my stuff, and I barricaded the door up. I put like the cupboards up against the door, all the tables. And then he was at my door mediating. He was like, you are going to Aylesbury. And I was like, I'm not going. He was like, you're going, and we're going to come in and take you. And he gave me some tobacco to try and make, you know, to calm me down. And then they all come in and twisted me up, and they dragged me all the way down in the stress position, along the main hallway, down the stairs, and then out to reception. And then they put me on this van to Aylesbury, and the whole journey there was just this intense anticipation, this crippling fear of my impending doom and my impending reality of going to this Aylesbury Young Offenders Institution. And then I arrived there in the white van. I got there. It's just this uninviting looking old Victorian
it looks much like Worm Scrubs, doesn't it? It's that same
kind of front,
awful.
Sorry,
go on.
And I got there and went through reception, and they said, have you heard about Aylesbury? I said, yeah. They said, it's not as bad as they say. And then they put me on the induction wing, and that was the start of my time at Aylesbury.
So can I ask you, at what point, living up to its reputation, how long had you been there, and what happened?
Well, as soon as you get there, it's got like young offenders institutions are very violent. I've been to young offenders institutions, like I've been to Chelmsford, Norwich, I've been to Onley 5 times, Feltham, and you will normally get on a lot of these units in young offenders institutions, there'll be up to 15 alarm bells a day at times, where it's just constantly kicking off. You know, where you're being tested, you've got to fight. If you don't fight, you become a victim.
When you come jail from the roads, it's more violent than when you're on road, because you're seeing everyone from the roads, and all of them all come together, and it's just peak, innit?
I've been brought up with a lot of violence in it, but I didn't used to like it. But when I'm at juvie, you see a lot of it, so you just get used to it, and then after that, you just start to like it.
You're from that era, you roll with them, so obviously if I see you, I'm gonna crack off your head, innit? Or if it gets to a extent and I know that you stabbed one of my friends, I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna stab you up, innit?
So you're constantly looking out for who's gonna join the wing?
Yeah, every day.
I wasn't violent, but I was kind of anti-authority, and all the other violent young offenders institutions I'd been at were very different. Like Aylesbury was ran with brutality. So the prison officers would stand there firm-handed with 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them chewing gum with earpieces. And as soon as you stepped out of your door to come out for lunch or dinner, they would be barking at you and shouting at you, keep on moving, away from doors, tuck your shirt in, 2 bits of bread per man. And if you've got anything to say to them, or if you look at them the wrong way, they bang everybody up and they come to your door, and they'll all stand outside, and the one that's got a problem with you, just take his radio off, come in your cell, and he'll just say, what you saying, son? And then like he might just lay into you. It depends. They're like bullies, yeah. It's very, very frightening, very, very frightening. And then so I was getting into, like, I wouldn't say arguments, but there was like tension between me and the officers. But I was really scared. I was like terrified. And then, because I was well behaved, and then they put me onto the enhanced wing. I think it was E wing. They put me onto an enhanced wing, but I was smoking loads of hash and weed over there, and then I got caught with a positive drug test. And then they put me onto B wing, and it was when I went onto B wing that things started to go like really bad. They racially segregated the young lads there. When I was there at that time in 2000, on A wing, it was all the white boys and the Gypsy Irish travellers who used to run the unit. And then on the B wing, it was predominantly black boys, and there wasn't that many white boys on that wing. And then when you upset the officers, they'd switch you onto the other wing. So when I went on to, go on.
So Pepsi, so are young offenders institutes do they not tend to be racially segregated usually?
Nah, not normally. It's not a big thing in England, like the racial segregation. Everyone just kind of, I mean, the blacks will normally stick together, but then you get infighting with them. The gypsies, the Irish gypsy travellers, they normally stick together, but it's normally like where you're from, like the Manchester boys will stick together, the Scousers. But being a Norwich boy in Aylesbury, you're just on your own. The same as being a Norwich boy in Fulham or Onley, you're just on your own. And from the moment you get there, the prisoners are testing you. They're coming to your door. They're telling you to bring your canteen out. Like you would go down for breakfast, and they would put, like, you'd have a metal tray, like this would be an Onley, and they would fill the metal tray up with milk, and then the next person would put like 10 cornflakes floating on top of the milk, yeah? Or they'd pile up the cornflix and put a little drop of milk, and they're at your door saying, put me down 2 packs of chocolate hobnobs on canteen, and then I'll sort your breakfast out. But you're supposed to be getting that breakfast anyway, yeah? And when you talk about like becoming a product of the system, this is a process that happens very quickly, Chris. Because the only way that you prevent yourself from becoming a victim is to be violent, yeah, and to attack people to prevent from becoming a victim. Because if you start giving your canteen out and start allowing these bullies to bully you, you will immediately have everybody just victimizing you constantly. And a lot of lads who go through this end up killing themselves, and then it's covered up.
So they voluntarily segregated Aylesbury by race while you were there?
It seemed that way when I was there. I mean, B Wing was just mostly black boys. There was hardly any white boys on there. And A Wing, there was a big group of Irish travellers on there. Yeah, and then it was mostly white boys.
In your time in Aylesbury, were you aware of any suicides?
There was suicides there, but I didn't see them myself. But there was a few there when I was there over the 3 years. There was probably 4 or 5 or 6 throughout the time that I was there. It was mostly kind of like what I kind of witnessed there was a kind of like brutal, quite sadistic regime where the prison officers would come to work smelling of alcohol, and the highlight of their day would be to kick the shit out of teenagers and to terrorize them.
No way. And did you have any direct attacks like that from staff?
Yeah, when I went onto the B Wing, I was smoking cannabis. I used to take the edge off and stuff. And then how it all started, I got on the wrong side of this prison officer. And I still remember him. I still remember his number and his name. And when he used to come into my cell to do bolts and bars, he would I'd have like paperwork and stuff on the floor, and he would stand on the paperwork and my letters and kick them to the side and all that, trying to torment me. And when I came out for lunch one day, I said something to him or looked at him the wrong way. I can't even remember, but they all come up to my cell and he come in my cell and offered me out and that. And yeah, I was really scared. I remember being really frightened, but I remember trying to just make him think that I wasn't scared. And then what I ended up smashing my cell up. I smashed my cell up, but the reason I smashed my cell up was because they were playing mind games with me. They would come to my door and they would say, "Do you want the gym?" Yeah, and I'd say, "Yeah, I want the gym." And then when the gym officer come, they would walk past my door and not open my door. But they woke me up and said, "Do you want the gym?" So I'd ring my bell and I'd say, "Look, I was supposed to be going to the gym." And they'd say, "That's not an emergency." Then they'd put me on report and take my telly for 2 weeks. And they keep playing these kind of mind games.
It's almost worse than the physical stuff, all of that stuff, and it's slowly just sending you crazy.
Yeah, it is. It kind of wears you down. The whole kind of unit and the regime there is kind of designed to kind of wear you down psychologically and to kind of make you self-destruct yourself. And then when you start to self-destruct, then they just start writing it down that you're disruptive, you've got poor emotional control, you're not engaging, and all this kind of stuff. And they were playing all these silly games with me, and then I ended up smashing my cell, and then I went to the block. And now when I went to the block,
hang on, Pepsi, can you explain what the block is?
So the block is the segregation unit, or the chokey. In America, they call it the shoe. So it's like a security unit where prisoners go who have been sent there. They might have had a fight with somebody on the unit, or they might have sworn at an officer. And when you get into trouble, they put you on a governor's report. Now, the governor's report would be a tool that the prison officers would use to as a part of this kind of psychological warfare. Now, I was in the block for 2 days. So you live in a concrete tomb. Yeah, there's no windows. It's like these little air vents. You're in this concrete tomb. All the plumbing is absolutely fucked because the taps just drip. Yeah, the taps just drip, and the toilet is hang on.
Sorry, Pepsi. You're on your own, right? You're in this little windowless, cold concrete block on your own.
Yeah, you're on your own. Yeah, you're on your own. And it's crawling with cockroaches, big, thick cockroaches.
When you say crawling with, what in an average night, how many cockroaches you dealing with?
Well, the whole prison was crawling with them, but the cell that I was in on B wing, B213, that was crawling. It was like a nest. Like I've found like 15 of them in my cell at times. Like, and I used to sleep with the artificial light on, wrapped in a sheet, just wrapped in the sheet in the middle of the bed like that, and I could hear them like that. They used to come in the window, they'd come in down the side of the toilet, they'd come in under the door. Your laundry bag with your clothes in would be full up with dead cockroaches and that. And the place is just absolutely crawling with them. They're everywhere. And
so you're wrapped in this sheet. Sorry, mate. You're wrapped in this sheet to stop them crawling over you.
Yeah, to stop them crawling over me. Yeah, and I was in that cell for like nearly 2 years in that cell. Yeah.
Shit. And how much proper sleep are you getting a night dealing with that? Because if I see one here, I'm in Cambodia, we have them out here. But if I see one, I'm shaking for an hour afterwards. I fucking hate them. They're filthy things.
Yeah, so it's horrible. It's the helplessness of being sort of locked in the cell with them, and you can't get rid of them, and you block the window up and block the toilet up. And even when you've blocked all the holes up and the door up, it's that thought in your mind of you know that they're there, and you know that they could come in at any time.
When you do eventually fall asleep, they're going to be crawling all over you, and you'll relax your arms, and they'll be under that sheet. Oh man, how did you block all the holes up? How did you do that?
Well, at first I thought they were coming in under the door because I found just one or two. And when I first saw them, I was just in shock. I mean, these things were just so big. So I threw them back under the door, swept them under the door, and then blocked the door up. And then I got back into my bed. And then 2 minutes later, I turned the light off. 2 minutes later, I could hear like...
Yeah, you can hear it. I know that.
So I turned the light on again, and they were coming in like all around the kind of dilapidated metal toilet, which is like half hanging off. They're all coming in up the sides, and they're coming in through the walls because all the bricks, they're all like decaying. And then we had these windows, and they would come in through the windows. Anywhere there was a little gap, they would come in. And they had this fumigator thing where they would fumigate the cells, but there was like nests of these things like in the building.
There must have been absolutely millions of them between all the walls of that centuries-old fucking brickwork. It's awful, man. So how much sleep were you getting a night in that cell?
I very much became like an insomniac. I started like deteriorating physically. I started deteriorating psychologically on that unit. The long bang up. I was banged up like 23 hours a day. And I used to stay up like most of the night, and then the cell was never in darkness because I would always have the artificial light on and have the sheet around me, and I would sleep for like 2 or 3 hours, then wake up, and then I would try and get some sleep in the daytime, and all the officers would come in to do bolts and bars and check the cell and all that, and then they would stand all over my stuff, leave the door, and then they would leave, and I was only really coming out for lunch, dinner. Exercise was 7 in the morning, so no one ever went out. And I wasn't getting a lot of sleep, and over like months and months and months, it started to affect me. But when I started going to this punishment block, when I was down there, it was just mayhem in this block. It was always full up. They'd always have prisoners in this block. Now, the regime in the segregation unit in Aylesbury, they would they'd come in the morning and give you milk, and they'd always open a door with a group of them, like a firm of them, like 7 or 8 of them, and they would come round. They'd give you milk in the morning, lunch at 12, tea at like 4 o'clock, and then you'd get half an hour to have a shower and walk around a goldfish bowl in this little exercise yard. And the governor would come round and just say like, "How are you?" or whatever. But it was when I was due to leave there. They on the day before I was supposed to leave, they opened my door and they said, "Are you looking forward to go back to B Wing tomorrow?" And then he threw a bit of paper on the floor and slammed the door. And then I picked up the bit of paper, and it was a governor's report saying that I'd refused to go back to the unit. So just stitching me up, yeah. And I was fuming.
hang on. So he said to you, "You looking forward going back to your cockroach-ridden cell on a wing full of segregated black people, which now I'm assuming to you was preferable to being on the block." And then he's just thrown a bit of paper on the floor, left, and it said you'd refuse to leave, so you're staying on segregation.
Yeah. That's what they've done. Yeah.
Complete lie.
Complete lie. Yeah, lied. Just made it
But
up.
what
Yeah.
has anyone got to gain from that? It just sounds cruel.
It's well, absolute power always corrupts. Absolutely, it's a regime that is unmonitored. They're a law unto themselves. Prisons and young offence institutions in modern Britain and decades gone by, they are these hidden away dark places that that exist, where bad things happen and abuse, systematic child abuse and child brutality is endemic. And it's endemic, right, entrenched into the DNA of these institutions, and it empowers the officers that they can get away with it, because they get away with it. You know, people die, children die in these places. It's all covered up, and when children die in these institutions, Chris, they automatically it's investigated by a prison and probation's ombudsman, who's just a Ministry of Justice state-sponsored puppet, civil servant puppet, and then it goes to an inquest, and then the Ministry of Justice sends the top-level sophisticated thinking Queen's Counsel QCs to the inquest, and then you, the victim's family, hasn't got legal aid. So it's all covered up. And the Ministry of Justice has all sorts of different kind of these cases, deaths in custody, going on all the time, but they never really make the mainstream news, because most of them don't reach a trial, and if they do, they're all settled out of court, where you sign a form saying you won't do a press release. Just yesterday, I mean, slightly going off topic, but just yesterday, it's all over Twitter, Chris. You know, a baby just died at HMP Bronzefield. I mean, this is a new low for the current government. I mean, it's bad enough anyway, but this is a new low. We've got prison officers. A woman,
tell a story.
A woman gave birth to a baby on her own in a cell with no medical help in Bronzefield, and the baby died. If that doesn't cause utter shock and horror in the current criminal justice system and in wider society, then there's something wrong, isn't there, Chris, for the fifth richest country in the world? I mean, it's absolutely horrifying. This is a baby. And at the same time, down in HMP Winchester, we got prison officers having boiling water thrown in their faces, where prisoners are enduring catastrophic breakdown in mental health due to the prolonged periods of isolation. Feltham Young Offenders in West London is on its knees, where the children are just banged up for long periods of time. Now, when I tell these stories and try and raise awareness for this stuff, you know, I predominantly the comments and the feedback I get is positive, but one of the themes, Chris, is about victims of crime. Yeah. Now, so I want to make a very important point about victims of crime, and you touched on it earlier. Now, the type of suffering, this human suffering that children and adults are enduring in the modern British penal estate that we're talking about, this abuse, I mean, this is not rehabilitation. I mean, this is revenge. Yeah, this is revenge. Yeah. Now, for justice means different things to different people, right? So, but what I would say, Chris, is that if I harm you, yeah, if I harm you, yeah, whether it's a knife point robbery, whether it's an attack on you, or a carjacking, or a burglary, if I harm you, is proportionate justice for you as a victim for me to be detained in a young offenders institution for 3 years, to be tortured by prison officers, to be banged up 23 and a half hours a day, to develop personality disorders, to become a regular self-harmer, endure catastrophic breakdown in mental functioning, and then leave prison with £40 and a drug habit to get released back into your community? I would say that is not giving you proportionate justice.
No,
I would say
it's insanity.
I would say that's you know, that's kind of taking the mick out of you as a victim of crime. And wider society needs to wake up to the fact that you know, when the state harms those detained by the courts, then the state harms society. The countries that are leading the globe on low recidivism, such as like Norway and Portugal, I mean, Norway's running around 16 to 20% recidivism, as opposed to the youth custody estate in England and Wales is running at near 90% recidivism. We churn out lifetime chronic recidivists week after month after year, and the British taxpayer deserves better. But what is the secret blueprint and the secret, you know, master plan that Norway have orchestrated to get their recidivism statistics down to 16 to 20%? Well, the big master plan, Chris, is that they treat those detained by the courts with dignity and respect. That's it.
I mean, imagine just treating them like humans. It's just, what? How did you work it out? But you know, like you say, you take someone who's already got issues, take someone whose life's already looking like it's at a dead end, and you know, and we can measure that by the fact they've committed the crimes. You know, look, this person's life's going wrong. Don't then fuck them up even more for God knows how many years in the kinds of environments you're talking about, and then chuck them back out onto the street. It's absurd. And that's before we even talk about the money, which I touched on earlier, the financial drain on society, on taxpayers, of putting the same person through court after prison after rehab it's just bonkers.
Yeah. The
so you're
reoffending.
sorry, Pepsi, you're saying that the British prison system has got a reoffending rate of not around 90%.
For young offenders in modern Britain, young offenders, the recidivism in England and Wales is around about 86%. Up in Northern Ireland, it's over 90%. With adults, in England and Wales, the recidivism is around 46 to 60%. Yeah,
absolutely shocking. And you touched on it earlier.
That's going back. That's those recidivism statistics are within 24 months, within 2 years.
Wow.
And this is costing the British taxpayer 15 billion per annum, 15,000 million per annum.
There you go, people. Look at that number, 15 billion. You touched on it earlier about a lot of the staff turning up for work smelling of alcohol, and I'd probably add cheap aftershave to that as well. I'm kind of getting this feeling a lot of people would have seen the Stanford prison experiment, where they took a group of people. Do you know it? Do you know the prison experiment?
I've heard a lot. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I think I've seen it in psychology.
Stanford Uni in America. They took a group of people, split them in two. Half of them were inmates, half of them were wardens. They were just all normal people, not criminals or anything, and they just sort of let them get on with it. And you know, they signed all these things. I mean, they got in a lot of trouble afterwards. But the wardens, within a matter of days, they were brutalizing these people. They knew that these people weren't real criminals. I mean, it's not really to do with that. The things they got them doing, the way they treated them, it was just shocking. And I'd hazard a guess that the staff in these institutions, you know, they're also being brutalized. In the system's brutalizing them as well to turn them into monsters that can treat 18-year-old kids like that.
Yeah, it's a very important
factory of abuse.
Yeah, it's an important perspective, Chris, because you're right. Yeah, I mean, they're sort of creating the environment creates those kind of that brutality and brings it out in those people. Now, when I spoke about on the Sean Atwood podcast of what happened to me in that segregation unit, I was in that segregation unit, in and out of there for about 13 months. And I assaulted an officer. I was experiencing like just absolutely intense, like frustration and pain. I was in a lot of pain. I was estranged from my family. I'd committed the robbery that had got me into prison. I had all these complex issues, like I'd been through the care system. I had no education. I had no employment skills. I was estranged, isolated from family. I was somebody who was.
Sorry to interrupt you, Pepsi. I want you to carry on down that line, but I don't want to forget this point. You were in care as a very young child. When you're in a young offenders institute, how many of those people in there were in care as kids?
So the young offenders institutions in England and Wales, over half, over 50%, around about 48% have got the literacy and numeracy levels of an 11-year-old child. Most have been through the care system. Most have been through care, and most have been expelled, around about 60-70%. If you're a child and you get expelled from school in 2019, it is virtually inevitable that you will end up in a young offenders institution. It's virtually inevitable.
I'd say the same about going into care as well. If you go into care, there's most of the people I know who ended up inside were in care. And there's similar things in rehab centres. Most of the people I've met in rehab centres were either sexually abused or they were in care, or both. And, this is an ongoing kind of sort of like a funneling of damage. The system's not working at a very young age. I know that care homes are just full of pedos and fucking nasty people. Not all of them, but fuck me, I keep hearing the same old story. And it just goes on, and no one's, ironically caring about these kids. And again, not only are you, the likes of you, suffering, but everyone's suffering because of this. And society as a whole is suffering because there's just a lack of basic care for children who need it.
People from the right side of the tracks are just going to think these kids are unruly and that just lock them up and throw away the key. Other people that have been through the system, people like myself, I look at the reasons why these people commit crime. A lot of people in prison that have been perpetrators have also been victims, guys, right? They haven't had the best upbringings. They've been born into abject poverty. They was unruly at school. They might have mental health problems, ADHD, things like that. The parents might have been abandoned them, or the parents could have been addicts. They might have grown up in care, physically abused, emotionally abused, sexually abused, right? And like I say, we are products of our environment.
Yeah, when I was in the segregation unit, I assaulted an officer. Now, what happened as a result of that was I was brutalized in a way that really impacted my life, and in a way that I'd never been brutalized before. I was stripped naked. I was stripped naked in this concrete tomb. They dragged me into this concrete tomb. They stripped me naked. They took all my clothes off. They snapped both of my thumbs right back where the bone was coming out.
Whoa, Pepsi! How many of them doing this?
So I was in a cell, and the whole cell was full up with prison officers. The entire cell.
8 or 9, 10.
Nah, more. As many officers that could fit in that cell as possible. Plus, there was officers outside of the cell. There was like 15 of them. They were all in the cell. And as they were putting me through this, they were laughing and mocking me. And then they threatened to rape me. Whoa.
They've stripped you naked. They're laughing and joking like you'd imagine on the playground. They've held you down. They broke your thumbs.
Yeah.
Ooh, tell me about that.
They had me. They laid me down, then they put me up against the wall, and I'm naked. I've got no clothes on, and I had long hair then, Chris, and they ripped all my hair out. They just tearing it out, tore all my hair out, and then they put me like in a stress position up against the wall below the window, and I was screaming, and every time I screamed, they were pulling my wrists back even further. Now, when they do this when they do control and restraint properly, it doesn't really hurt. It's just a bit uncomfortable. But they were like torturing me. And then they threatened to rape me, and they left me up against this wall, and it just seemed like it went on for ages. It went on for over half an hour.
Whoa,
and then
hang on. What are they doing for half an hour? What?
They say, stop struggling, but you got like 7 fully grown men on you. They're taking my clothes off, pulling my hair out. They're near me in the side, like they hit you where, like, not in the face, like, so it hurts you, but there's no bruises. But I had a bruise on my eye. I had bruises down here. And then they stick their fingers in your throat. They stick their fingers in your eyes. They do all these kind of techniques, and they enjoy it. I think some of them actually get an erection from it.
Yeah. All right, Pepsi, can I just stop you? So there's at least 15 people know this is going on because they're fucking there.
Yeah, there was a doctor there as well.
The prison doctor's there.
Yeah, and they were filming it on a camera. And when we went to trial at Oxford Court for a 3-day trial for torture, inhumane degrading treatment, assault, and misfeasance in a public office, my barristers demanded the video footage of what happened, and they said that they didn't have any video footage. But I saw the camera. I know they filmed it.
Can I ask you, what's it like? I mean, I know it's a long time ago, but what is going through your mind at 18, 19 years old when you're being physically, almost sexually abused, naked, having your hair ripped out? Did they break your wrists or your thumbs? I don't understand what happened there.
It's like my right hand here, like the bone on my thumb, is still sticking out.
Lift your hand up. Show me.
Yeah, like the bone here, it still sticks out, and like, it's really weak, and then in the winter it goes kind of like blue and purple.
So they've just yanked this back out.
They pull it. They pull it right back and then just snap it. Do you know what I mean? And then so I couldn't eat. I couldn't eat for days. I'm like this, and then they told me that I'm gonna die. They told me that they're gonna make sure I end up hanging from the bars. There was 1 or 2 of them. There was 2 of them. The one that was targeting me, and then there was another one. And they told me, and I thought they were going to kill me and cover it up. That's what I thought they were going to do. Cool. I thought I was going to die in that segregation unit because they told me that I was going to die in there. That's what they told me. And then what they used to do, after they did what they did, they would come back to my cell and just stare at me through the flap and shake the key, saying, we're going to come back in, we're going to come back in. Have you had enough, son? Have you had enough? Like, psychologically tormenting me. So you're constantly living in fear minute by minute. Every time you hear them come up the stairs, every time you hear the keys, you're at the door, like listening, thinking that they're going to come in. And when they open the door,
this is what I mean about how you got out of this as well as you have. I mean, that's just, you know, a couple of minutes of that sort of treatment out in the world is enough to freak the fuck out of you. But having this for weeks, day after day, after week, after month, and that was my question. What is it like? You're up against the wall. They've snapped your thumbs. I imagine there was claret running down your head if they've had your hair out. They're threatening to rape you. They're telling you you're going to die. What goes through a man's mind? What are you thinking?
Because
I think listen, I'll tell you why, Pepsi. It's not nothing like the same, but I can remember being physically abused by teachers at school, you know, beaten up in rooms, and I knew it shouldn't have been going on, but I remember thinking, this is my fucking school. And he was even saying to me, no one's going to believe a word you say. You can go and tell whoever you want about this. No one's going to believe you. And I just lost all faith in society. I just thought you know, my outlook on the world was broken then, because I thought there's no comeback for me here. I am just utterly powerless, because for the simple reason, this bloke is a wanker.
Yeah, there is that kind of intense powerlessness and hopelessness and helplessness and vulnerability. But I think, I don't know, they kind of make you feel that you deserve it. That's what they do. They make you feel that you deserve it, and you haven't really got anything to measure it against. So you kind of think that it's like normal and it's just part of being locked up. And I never really sort of comprehended or was able to grasp at that age the impact that this would have on me in later life. Like when I first spoke about this on the other podcast, I had this barrage of comments, Chris, saying, you need to hunt them down and you need to do this. But I never got a chance to speak about this on the podcast. It was the fact that the process that I've been through now, the stage that I'm at now, nearly 20 years later, as a 37-year-old man. Everything that happened to me, and I stood on trial under cross-examination by a Home Office QC called David Barr, and every single one of those 13 prison officers and a doctor, they took an oath and just lied in the trial. They all lied, every single one of them. Now, where I'm at today with those people, everyone's saying, "Oh, you should get revenge," and that. I have had to go through a process of forgiveness. I forgive all of the prison officers that brutalized me. I wish them all good health. I wish their children good health. I wish them prosperity in their lives. I don't wish them any harm. They're welcome in my home to share food with me. They can sit across my table and I will share food and drink with them. And that is how I feel and forgiveness is not something like I do on a Thursday and then it's done on a Friday. Sometimes I hate them again. And I have to go through that process again and forgive them again because it still impacts me today in my adult relationships. It affects me with nightmares. It affects me when I'm out on the street. I can't have people behind me. It's and I do have remorse for what I did. I did a robbery. I stole money from a shop. I've got remorse against the victim. The victims of crime don't have a voice in this country, and that's one of my missions, is to give victims of crime a platform. You've got a load of high profile.
Hang on, Pepsi, before we go down there, I just want to go back to that whole forgiveness thing, because I know people watching this are struggling with that. They're already thinking, I want to kill those fuckers. And because I know this, I've done a lot of work on my own resentments, and this comes down to resentment, because I know that if you can't forgive and if you can't accept, that stuff's going to tear you to pieces. And
it'll destroy you. It will destroy you. Yeah, it's to forgive requires a lot of courage. It's very, very difficult to go to them places within yourself and to explore those dark places of your soul, to begin that process of forgiveness. It's very, very tough. It's very, very tough. But the rewards are incredible. And you said at the start of the stream, when you said about compassion, and what I would say, Chris, is the diversity and suffering and pain, this is where we can cultivate compassion. So if we can somehow find a way to forgive and overcome these demons, then our ability to feel and practice that compassion for other human beings is hugely enhanced,
Yeah, we'll wrap it up now, because we've come full circle. Right at the beginning, I said I am surprised that you have come out a kind, loving, compassionate, and on all appearances stable person. I mean, I know you've got shit going on, but find me someone who hasn't. And you've just nailed it. Yeah. You've managed to forgive. You've managed to let go. Maybe not 100%, but you're not Jesus. And you've managed to accept. And that acceptance, that forgiveness, that's what makes you who you are. And that's how you survived this. And fuck me, man, more power to you. Because I'll pluck a number out of the air. I reckon 99% of people wouldn't be able to even consider it, let alone doing it. I've got so much respect for you, Pepsi. It's
Thanks,
just
man.
amazing. And the work you're doing, you know, I've got a YouTube channel, I have my agenda, but yours is all about looking into this stuff. Like you said, victims of crime, all the young offender stuff you do. People watching, please check out Pepsi's channel. Go and have a look. It might not be your thing, but it might be. Subscribe to him, watch some videos, show him some love, because this is a success story against all the fucking odds. And before you judge, consider the fuck ups you've made in your life when you've had pretty much everything going for you, before you judge what people have done when they've had fuck all going for them. Pepsi, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'd like to get you on again, maybe 6 months down the line, and we'll focus on a slightly different area.
It's been an honour, Chris. The pleasure's been all mine, and it's been great to work with you. And thanks for all your support. And I look forward to working with you again at some point in the near future. It really has been a pleasure, mate. Honestly.
Nice one, Pebbles. Bye. We want this debate. We're confident in this debate because we've looked at what's going on. And we're sure that you've got it wrong.